Hello, welcome back. My name's Pete Marshall and this one is all about composition and form. Although we're also going to include use of isopropyl alcohol and how we create backgrounds such as we can see here in these examples. Here's another example and we can see in the dress here that same use of isopropyl alcohol. But as I said, the main thing is going to be about composition and form, about the rule of thirds, and why we offset our focal points away from the center, although sometimes, as you can see, we break rules. I think what I'm intending to do this time is create something similar to this. So let's get started and have a look at that in more detail. The first thing we need to do is determine the colors we're going to use. So we're going to use our color wheel. I like to use the CMY color wheel, and I use a tetrad of colors. In this particular instance, we will choose a key color of blue, which means its complementary is orange, and the supplementary colors would then be green and magenta. Now the first thing we're going to do is tape the paper to the table. And we're doing this just so that we can have a white edge around our image. The second step is we're going to cover the paper with gesso, just to seal the paper. Otherwise all our paint will soak into it and the effect won't work. So, here we go. Having taped the edge, we will now add gesso to the paper. And we'll do that by using a credit card, because I find it's nice, simple and easy. Doesn't have to be too neat. It's okay if we leave lines on the page, it just adds to the effect. But we do want to seal the paper. So cover it up as best as possible, and then we'll leave that to dry. It dries, we can put a background color on this before it dries and then leave it to dry. Okay, so we'll do that straight away. So let's add some orange. I'm adding orange directly onto the page, and I'll use a cloth to take a bit of water to it. Cloth to cover the page. Once again, this doesn't need to be perfect. It kind of adds to the effect if it's not perfect. So, plenty of water. And there we go. Right into the corners. Job done. Now we need to let that dry and come back with the next layer of paint. So the next step is to add our watery blue paint, and it's important to make sure this is watery. So cover the whole canvas. Once again, we don't need to be too precise about this. Here we go. Watery. Make sure it's watery and make sure it covers the whole canvas. There we go. And then we're going to use our isopropyl alcohol to break the paint. This is a really fun, exciting bit. We just splash that on. Isn't that nice? What an effect. And if we want, we can dab it on, putting it in the places that we want. Let's just put a little more. And then we just leave it to dry. You notice that this area was not quite wet enough, so it didn't break as well as this area. It goes to show. It's important to make sure the paint is wet. If it's not wet enough, it won't break efficiently. Might just add a little bit of water to that corner and try putting a little more on over there. It's a good lesson in how not to do it. How not to do it also gives us an impression of how we should be doing it. Okay, we're going to leave it to dry now. This is the fun bit, removing the tape. I really enjoy this part of the process. Removing the tape, it's done, pulling it very slowly away from the painting. And then we move on to the next step. And now we're going to look at composition and form. Generally, we have the rule of thirds, which dictates that we should place our focal points at one of these 4 points. However, as we know, rules are there to be broken. So to aid me with this composition, I've cut out a few pieces of paper. And I've also cut out a rough shape that I'm going to use for my figure, and I've cut out a head, a couple of hands, and I also found an image of some chains that I thought would work really good on this background. So let's look at that. We can't put our figure into the center because that just doesn't work. Well, maybe it does work if we offset it with a background, but I don't think so. I think that maybe this could be a good form. Maybe we should turn around the other way, in fact. Okay, maybe this works better. I think if we're going to employ using the chain, it doesn't really work down here, does it? We could make this a little thinner, perhaps, but I think the thing to do is experiment and find something that you're quite happy with. I'm going to go with something a bit like this. Off to one side, I'll shrink it down just a little bit, and I'm going to put my figure here. This way I can use the chain up the top. I think that looks fairly good. Let's have the heads and the hands, and just to give an indication of what it really looks like, or what it might look like. I think we could go with something like that. Maybe just a little thinner. The next step would be to mark that up roughly using a white pastel crayon. So then we could start, then we could start painting. Okay. So we just kind of roughly draw around our paper, so we've got a layout, something like this. The pastel we can wipe away easy just with a wet cloth afterwards. So that was simple. Here we go. Let's remove the card. We're left with our figure. So we can also remove the hands. It's pretty, yeah, I think it's good that you break the edges. The hands come out of the white box. So let's just roughly draw or paint around, draw a line. Let's just roughly draw a line around our figure so we have an indication of where our white paint's going to go. Just block it out. We don't have to be too exact. We can make that, in fact, let's remove the head. We do need to be a little thinner than that because our head will go on top. So, yeah, we'll make the cutout just a little larger than the cutout and all the way down to the bottom. Okay. Yeah, you can see what I mean about it. We put the head on top, that will cover the background. So yeah, let's drop in this section here just so that we can define the elbow or the arm coming out. And that's about it. These things, the hands, the feet and the head and the chain, we're going to put on with acrylic gel. So let's move on to the next step. What I've done is obviously I put down my rough guides And I thought I'll use a bit of tape here to block it off. I've changed it a little bit because I wanted the dress to run into the background. So we'll just block in the, plenty of water here, block in and draw the basic outline of our figure. Doesn't need to be too precise, this. Just a general indication. The arm does look a little thick, so we'll thin that out. Once we put our cutouts on, yeah, it'll look pretty good. Okay, so we're doing it in a painterly fashion. It doesn't have to be too precise. No straight lines here. This can be done very quickly. And the head's not so important because we're going to paint over that head. We're painting over our line to go all the way to the top. Because we're introducing the piece at the bottom, which is going to be the continuation of the skirt or dress that she's wearing. So there we go. Painterly fashion, choppy, short, sharp, choppy strokes. And should I be speeding this up so you can see what I'm doing? No, it doesn't matter what we're doing around the head because we're going to cover it with the cutout of our head. Okay, here we go. Short, sharp, choppy strokes. The only bit that's going to be a little bit delicate is the piece where our elbow is. So doesn't matter too much either here. This is just part of the dress. And when I say a little bit tricky, I mean not tricky at all. We're going to remove the tape. Let's do that. What was that piece doing down there? So there it is. There's our general outline. What we can do is just with a little piece of water, we can remove the pastel that we used earlier on. So there we go. If we've got any of those lines that we need to get rid of. And what we're going to do now is put on our cutouts. Here we go. The way to do that is we use gel medium. Gel medium is just kind of like paint without the pigment. So, let's take some gel medium, hold down the head, put it on plenty thick. What happens is it looks white, but when it dries clear. So we don't get to see it once it dries out. Okay, I'm doing this roughly as quick as I can, so you've got an idea. I'm going to put a hand around here. And yeah, the hand could probably be facing the other way up. Yeah, maybe I should have printed it out in reverse. There we go. It's just to give you a general impression. Let's put, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, as I said, just giving a general impression. So you can see what it is. You can be a little bit more precise if you wish. I think those imposition works well too. Oh, now, my little change that I found that I thought looked pretty good. I'm going to put those down here as well. So, yeah, as you can see, I'm not being too precise with this. It's another, I mean, it would be nice if it met exactly at the top, and it does. Which is why I put it down first and hold it there. Now you see my finger pulled up a little bit of the paper there. That's a pity, but being as a, how we would say, distressed chain, it looks pretty fine. Let's add another little one in here. And this was just really because I thought I'd add another element just to show you the process in general. And as I said, this will dry clear. You won't see any of this white. And there it is, basically. A little similar, a very quick version of this one. There's just one more step to come. And for that, we need to let it dry. Okay, one last thing. If you recall, when we started, we said we were going to use magenta and green as well as our supplementary colours. So we're going to use a kitchen towel and just rub on in part, being a bit careful not to go around the outside, a bit of magenta and a bit of green. Just dab it around here and there. It just helps pull it all together and give it a little more of a story. So there's our magenta across. No problem putting it on top of the... It ties it all together a little better. And you know what we're going to use for the green? We're going to use just a little dab of luminous green. That might be extreme, I don't know. Let's just try it, see how that works. Yeah, okay. Just a little bit of luminous green. Oh, that was rather extreme. Take that off, but we can take it back. Just add, and if you put a little too much on, just take some water and easily just wash off. Just be careful with the edges. And I think we can add a little more down here, up into the dress. And if we want, we can go a little further around the sides. Okay, I think you get the general idea. The example. There it is.